Entrepreneurship in Vietnam versus France and the US is like stepping into a fast-moving river versus navigating a calm but crowded highway. While developed markets offer stability and structural growth, Vietnam provides a wealth of opportunities for those willing to take risks and adapt. Hey, I'm Guillaume. I've been living in Vietnam for nearly 10 years. I'm running an agency specialized into helping SMEs and entrepreneurs to leverage their opportunities in Asia with a strong focus on Vietnam. Over the past decade, I've navigated the ups and downs and the challenges of running a business overseas, especially in an emerging market like Vietnam. And today, I'm happy to invite Mr. Vinh Ho on this YouTube channel, who is an experienced import-export entrepreneur who have been doing business between Asia and the US to discuss about what you should know if you want to start a venture, a journey in Asia. We're going to discuss the main differences between doing business in the US or in France versus in Vietnam, as well as some of the misconceptions that many people are having about this part of the world. Hey Vin, I'm very happy to have you today.
I'm good, Guillaume. It's great to be here.
So maybe you can start by introducing yourself and your journey between the US and Asia.
Sure. So around 2018 or so, I moved to Asia, first in Thailand, and then worked in Vietnam. So I had some e-commerce businesses that I was running. And around that time, I was importing products into the United States and selling them on Amazon FBA and some other platforms, mostly just e-commerce before I got into sourcing. And then before going back to the US and working at a different career and job now. So that's a little bit of experience.
Thanks, mate, for this quick introduction. So actually doing business in the US or in France versus Vietnam will be slightly different. We have in one side a well-established and well-developed market. Things are very well regulated. And on the other side, we may have a mix between challenges and opportunities. Understanding that differences can help entrepreneurs to navigate each landscape effectively and make the most out of it. So the first idea, it's about the maturity versus the opportunities. When we take a market like the US or France versus Vietnam, obviously for the developed market, there may be more competition already there. There may be more regulations there. So there may be lack of opportunities. Where if we are thinking about an emerging economy, an emerging market like Vietnam, Doi Moi is in 1986. So it's like 30, 40 years that the country is opening up. Obviously, there will be more potentials over there. And Vietnam's economy is growing rapidly and many industries are still in their formative stages. And this creates opportunities for entrepreneurs to enter that market and to tap into. It's going to be less structured, more flexible. So while Vietnam regulatory environment is still improving, as a new player, you may be able to take more market share and then grow into a certain industry. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, generally speaking, if you use a large brush stroke, America, North America, and Europe and France, they're mature markets. They're developed for decades now, whereas Vietnam is kind of like the Wild West and has lots of opportunities depending on, different sectors and industries. So because it's still developing and developing quickly, there might be opportunities for certain services, products, and things like that.
Yeah, very good, Vin. So actually, if we are comparing, we will have opportunities, but also difficulties, especially if you want to approach such a market as a foreigner. I'm just thinking about the regulation, understanding about the codes.
Yeah, that is some truth to that. In North America and Western countries, there's more of a contractual or a legal basis for doing business. It's enforced. There's rules, regulations, the rule of law. So you get compensated if someone breaks that law, or you can sue. There's a process to negotiate or get your money back or find justice. Whereas in maybe Southeast Asia, Asia in general, it's more of a trust between business partners. And there are contracts, but doesn't have that legal backing to have teeth behind legal proceedings. So there are some differences there too. I think that would be the biggest one.
Then opportunity-wise, if you go to Vietnam, if you target a big city, you may have a product or you may have an experience that you can really implement, and you will find in such market, just because they are growing very fast, you may find more easily a certain customer base or a certain service to serve these clients. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Like I mentioned, as Vietnam continues to grow, there's opportunities. And for example, if you're Western educated, you might study law, or you have some tech background, or maybe you're in the health field. You can look at Vietnam, and there's certain sectors that are underdeveloped, so there's opportunities in that industry. So you might have certain expertise or knowledge that you can apply that Vietnam is not really up to par in terms of their development. So you could help. For example, I recall living there 4 or 5 years ago, and Western food is becoming more popular in Vietnam. So there's some Westerners that would maybe open a pizza restaurant and then do very, very well, or a hamburger or cheeseburger joint. And it would take off because a lot of young people would like to consume those types of foods. And it was very popular, very trendy. Whereas if you were open a pizza place in America, maybe it's saturated. There's so many other places already established.
Okay, very good insights, Vin. Now let's move on to the topic of the cost. How costly and how expensive is it to open up a business in terms of the labor aspect, but also the operational cost that you will have, and then the main differences between the US and then Vietnam?
Yeah, I think Vietnam has the advantage overall in cost savings. If you just look at like the labor, I believe the labor cost is around 400, 500, 600 US dollars for college educated person. The factory worker might make 500 US dollars. Unskilled laborers make $300 a month. So it's very, very low cost to hire help. Whereas in the United States, in North America, in Europe, in France, that's unheard of. You would have to pay someone at least 2,000 US dollars a month just to have him or her work full time for you, and most likely even more. So right away, the labor cost is already high. The other advantage is you can get more reasonable prices in terms of like if you have a co-working space or doing service for establish your business in Vietnam, there might be a small fee to pay, a few hundred US dollars. So that type of paperwork might be a little bit more low cost compared to the US. So there are some differences there. The main one being labor, and then as well as housing, hotels, for example. If you go to visit Vietnam for a factory tour or establishing your business, the hotels here are in Vietnam are very, very reasonable. We're talking the cheapest, maybe 20, 30 US dollars. But I would say the average would be 40 or 50 US dollars a night for a very nice Western style hotel. And if you pay up to 100 US dollars, you're getting, 5-star, the nicest place. So big differences there.
Yeah, so definitely I agree with you, Vin. I just want to emphasize a little bit on the fact that if you are targeting a major city, a major hub such as Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi, and you really want to get a key location, let's say you want to open a restaurant, you will still have to pay every month probably 5 to 6K US dollar just because you get the best location out there. While if you are definitely doing something online, if you just rent a co-working space, it may be way cheaper than that, and obviously it will be $50, maybe 100 US dollar per month to rent a co-working space. So you already have a wide range in terms of the pricing that you have in Vietnam. It's not always because it's in Vietnam that is cheap. And also regarding the fact that opening a company in Vietnam, it may be more expensive than opening an LLC in the US. I do have an LLC in US. I think I pay 400-500 US dollar to open it probably 5-6 years ago. In Vietnam, if you do want to open a similar company, so an LLC, it's gonna cost you 2 to 2.5K dollar. So for this as well, the price is significantly higher in Vietnam than in the US.
And to add to that, Guillaume, I know that Europe, especially France, there's much more rules and regulations and red tape, bureaucracy, I believe. I've never done business there, but I remember traveling in Europe and hearing what people say, just to do the paperwork or get permits or get permission to open a business or even to hire. I heard in France is very, very difficult. There's rules and regulations that really protect the employee. You can't fire him. It's very difficult. Or if you do fire him, then you have to pay a certain wage for him, maybe for 6 months. Maybe you know a little bit more than I on that.
So very good point, Vin. Regarding the social aspect in France, if you are an entrepreneur and you are hiring someone, there is a lot of rules, and then employees are very well protected. They are protecting on the healthcare aspect, they are protecting on the retirement aspect, and you cannot fire anyone just like that. It's true that in the US or in Vietnam, if someone is not good,
You're fired. You're fired.
in France, you may be sued for that. You may be really in trouble if, as an employer, you are firing someone. So there are a lot of rules and then a lot of regulations that make doing business in France very difficult if you want to scale a business. So what about now, Vin, the idea of the business culture? In Vietnam, you may prioritize relationship. You often even build relationship before you even do business with someone. There is this manner and there's this tradition of inviting prospects, clients, partners over coffee restaurants to ask about their family, to really have this intimacy sometimes with some people in your network. While in the US, it may be slightly different, right? When you are doing business and establishing even a long-lasting business with someone.
Yeah, I would say in Vietnam and Asia in particular, it's really based on relationships and connections if you want to go far. So you have to develop those relationships. You have to spend time with the other party, whether it be with the family or eating and drinking, as you mentioned, or you have to know him or her for a good amount of time to build that trust. And then, like I said, you have to have connections, whether it be, getting certain permits or paperwork done, maybe city or the provincial level. So you have to have kind of help there.
What about now some of the misconception that foreigner may have when they want to come to Asia? For instance, can anyone do business here easily? Probably the first myth that people can have is, if I have a bit of money in Vietnam, I can come here and easily set up a business. It's going to be cheap and it's going to be easy. Do you want to tackle this myth?
I don't know if it will be easy, but you might have leverage if you have 5 or 10,000 US dollars and you come to Vietnam and maybe running an online business. Your money will definitely go further. So you can test market, you can try things out. Your living costs are so low, maybe 1,000 US dollars a month. Your housing and eating, you'll get a lot of services in exchange. You might have a maid. You can get around town very quickly, easily. So you don't have that high cost of living that we have in North America and Europe. People have cars here. They have a house, a mortgage to pay. They have insurance, and all that adds up. So that's a higher cost of living. Whereas if you had a smaller amount of money and you went to Vietnam, you might be able to string it along longer and test things out and then find an industry that you can get traction in. Again, it won't be easy, but you might have more runway to try and test your ideas.
Okay, very good. Totally agree with that. And let's say if you are very experienced, you've been climbing the ladders overseas, you are probably 35, 40, so you have 15 years of background. Do you think with that profile, it can be easy to fit into the Vietnamese market, either as an employee or an entrepreneur?
I see it both ways. It really depends on the industry. If there's growth in that industry, for example, if you have tech skills and you've worked 10 or 15 years in technology and you've built companies or built teams and you're very good at that, and then you come to Vietnam where technology is much needed, and then you might do very, very well. And that could be true for other types of careers or industries, maybe accountant, or you're a dentist or engineer. Sometimes you might be overqualified and you might not find a good match. So it's really hard to say. But generally speaking, we in the West, we speak English and we have advanced degrees. And so that could help you definitely stand out from the crowd. Most locals are not going to have that prestige. They go to local schools and colleges, if any at all. And, if you have more of a global mindset, more higher education, you might be able to use that in your advantage. But it really depends, again, on the industry and the certain circumstance.
Okay, great, Vin. And then we touched earlier the fact that relationships are very important. Let's say now we take the other example and we say someone who has a very strong network, very strong relationship, but he only has that. He only have a very good network. He arrived here. Do you think it's enough to succeed in Vietnam?
You might be able to get some traction. I think it helps to know people and have those relationships. So yes, very, very helpful. But then you'd have to have some kind of backing in terms of some money or cash flow to make it work. You'd have to have kind of both. So the relationship is good. It's a good start. But if you can get that cash reserves to test your ideas, to put money behind certain projects, then you go much further.
Okay. And then do you think with 10,000 US dollar cash, you can have some chance to succeed in Vietnam, or do you think it's more 50,000 nowadays? Probably it used to be 10,000 in 2017 when we arrived, but what about now?
Yeah, I think 10,000 is a really good number. That's quite a lot of money. I think still today, obviously you can't get into big projects or, start a hotel or get into construction or anything like that. But I think 10,000 is more than adequate to start like an online business or to test some type of service. Again, you'd have to leverage the low cost there to make it work. You have one or two clients, or especially if you have clients in North America or Europe that are paying you higher fees for your services, and then you leverage that by getting local help. You can train somebody, whether it be video editing, accounting, or some kind of technology. And if you train that person, and then if you're able to do more sales, and then you can grow the team, and then you might be on your way.
Yeah, definitely. I think with 10,000 US dollar in Vietnam for an outsourcing business, we are talking about outsourcing. So you plan to build a team in Vietnam to support a foreign company. So it can be finding client in the US. So B2B, then probably it's a good way to start. But if you are planning to enter Vietnamese market to either distribute a product, a service, or to open a coffee shop, a restaurant, things like that, I think you would need to multiply at least by 3 or 4 to have enough runway to rent a venue, to hire people, and then also to have enough cash on the side, because it's going to take time, probably a few months before you start to get your first customers, you start to get traction in Vietnam. And Vietnam is a competitive market. Don't forget that. So it's not because you are new, you are young, or you have good ideas that the path will be very smooth. Here, there is also smart people who already probably did what you plan to do before you. So it's going to be also a competitive market, right?
Yeah, I really agree on what you said, Guillaume. And I would add that, good ideas don't really matter. It's execution that matter. Everyone has good ideas, but it's those that execute and use the grit and build this team that really finds success. And that's anywhere, right? That's Europe, that's the US, Canada, and Asia and Vietnam in general. So you might have a good idea, but unless you try it out and you start to execute, get traction, and sustain that, unless you do that, you won't really have a business to talk of.
Okay, thanks, mate, for these tips. Do you have a last thing to share to probably future entrepreneurs who are considering either doing business in the US or in Vietnam?
Yeah, I would think if you're young and energetic and adventurous, I think Vietnam, Southeast Asia in general is a great place to start. That's where I started with online businesses and e-commerce. I found some success and I failed at other things, but I think trying it out in Southeast Asia and in Vietnam in particular is a good idea, especially, again, if it's online business and you can test your ideas and try different things out, live a great lifestyle for a fraction of the cost that you could do that in the Western countries.
Okay, thanks, mate, a lot. I will leave below in the description more detail, more resources if you want to check this out or learn more about those topics. And I will also leave Vinh channel so you can check him out. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Guillaume.
Bye-bye.
Down and I'ma get it right, then I'll sight like